Hello everyone. Um, Today I'm going to be covering every cat Pokemon and what it does. Each of them, one by one, in order of creation. So to start, CAP, or the Create a Pokemon project, is a community-based project in which the community gets together and simply creates a Pokemon, one which is competitively viable, based off of a concept. Each of these Pokemon are very unique in their own ways, so I'm just going to cover them one by one and, sprinkle in a couple of tidbits here and there as a pretty basic cursory introduction to all of these Mons. Uh, yeah, let's start. So we'll start with Cyclant. Cyclant was the first cat Pokemon ever created, and because it was this early, Cyclant didn't actually have a concept it was based off of. It has been given a custom ability called Mountaineer, where on switch in, this Pokemon avoids all rock type attacks and Stealth Rock. It also has the ability Compound Eyes, which pairs pretty well with certain sets. The set which is quote unquote the sample set is a Nevermelt Ice set with Ice Beam, Earth Power, U-Turn, and Spikes, but there are many other sets you can run on Cyclant due to the fact that it is a very capable mixed physical and special attacker with a pretty good speed tier to boot. A big issue with Cyclant, however, is how weak it is, frankly, to priority and to other speed control because it's very frail. Cyclant can run Swords Dance sets. It can run sets with Tail Glow because it does get that. It can run Choice Band sets and Choice Spec sets. It has a Compound Eyes Blizzard, so heavy duty boot sets work as well. So all in all, it's a pretty versatile Pokemon, but not one which is actually used very often because of its shortcomings. It falls to speed control very easily, and speed control is very abundant in the Gen 9 meta. Between Dragapult, Iron Valley, and other types of booster speed mons, Hemogoblins, Extreme Speed, which I'll bring up in a second, and really many other things. And the fact that it can't really break past a lot before boosting, which is another pretty big shortcoming of it. But overall, it's still a very fun Pokemon to use, lots of versatility, and the first one ever created, so it has a bit of novelty on that end as well. You will notice, especially near the start, there will tend to be a couple of custom elements to some of these caps, such as Mountaineer mentioned here, and a couple later that I'll talk about. This is something, the practice of which ended uh, pretty early on in the Create a Pokemon project. But earlier on, they did just decide to make whatever they wanted to because they could. So moving on. Revenant. Revenant also did not have a concept because it was so early on in the process. It is a ghost fighting type with a pretty decent special bulk, pretty decent physical bulk, a pretty poor speed tier, and a somewhat decent attack stat. Revenant gained the ability Triage in, I believe, Generation 7, so now its niche is primarily a bulk up sweeper with Drain Punch, Poltergeist, which it just received very recently after it was removed from it at a time, um, for some time, and Shadow Sneak or Moonlight. Um, so yeah, this Pokemon primarily functions as a bulk up sweeper, triage, drain punch, and Moonlight help it keep its health up. Um, and Ghost Fighting Stab is very potent. We have to see how this Pokemon will develop within the metagame because it just received Poltergeist, as in literally today, as I'm recording this. It just got it back. So we'll have to see how that further impacts the meta. But, overall, a pretty strong Pokemon and a good win con at times. Next, we have Pyroke. This is the last of the creative Pokemon creations that don't have a concept. This Pokemon, Grass Fire type, and its primary usage in the meta at the moment is that of a contrary tank. However, Pyroke received a pretty major buff in Gen 8, which led to it becoming pretty overbearing, and as a result, it was nerfed once more, making it a lot less strong. In fact, it has the lowest base stat total of all creative Pokemon creations, all cap Pokemon. Um, So, unfortunately, currently it does not really have much of a niche, but it does have Contrary. So, Contrary Overheat with Earth Power Giga Drain Synthesis is pretty much its best set at the moment. Moving on. Fidget is exactly what the name I put up here says it is. It is the ultimate utility Pokemon. That's the name of the concept. It is specifically made to be as good at um, utility as possible. So, to help with that, it was given a pretty good speed tier, pretty decent bulk overall, and the ability Persistent, which extend Gravity, Heal Block, Safeguard, Tailwind, and Room effects for two more turns than they are currently. Obviously, this has huge ramifications. Specifically, being able to extend Tailwind and Trick Room are very, very, very useful for a Pokemon which attempts to, be the ultimate utility mon. But obviously, um, aside from the four moves that you see up here, which are is its like I guess typical set, it has many other moves as well. Obviously, considering it's the ultimate utility mon, so it has knockoff, it has screens, rapid spin, uh, it has spikes as well as stealth rock. It has toxic spikes, toxic U-turn, and whirlwind. It also has wish. So it has a ton of utility things, but typically it is really only used on Trick Room. The Tailwind set is somewhat decent, but there are just better Mons as your support on Hyper Offense, and Hyper Offense isn't actually that strong in cap at the moment either. So, I mean, right now Fidget definitely has a very well established niche. Um, but it's not one which is commonly expressed in the meta at this moment. Next, we have Stratagem. The concept of Stratagem was break the mold, which means that they were aiming to create a Pokemon whose role was pretty inconsistent with how its typing typically operated in the meta. Keep in mind, this Pokemon and all the ones mentioned before were created in Gen 4, so Diamond Pearl Platinum meta. Um, where rock types were typically pretty defensive, wally Pokemon, and still for the most part pretty much are, with the exception of, all the good ones. But moving on. So they created pretty much an offensive rock type. Here you see Paleo Wave, another custom element. Persistent was also obviously a custom element, if y'all couldn't tell. But Paleo Wave, another custom element, which gave it a rock type move with good accuracy, decent power. Um, and yeah, Stratagem is okay. It's not bad by any means. It's used on hyper offense now. Before it received Meteor Beam, it was sort of in limbo. Again, it wasn't terrible, but uh, in a meta where you're allowed every cat Pokemon and also every other Pokemon in OU down, it's hard to really find a niche for everything. And Stratagem just sort of fell in limbo for a bit. But now with the Meteor Beam raising its attack and really firing off a very powerful 120 BP stat move, it has solidified a pretty sizable niche on hyper offensive teams. Again, they're not the strongest in the current meta, but it could do much worse, frankly. Um, and yeah, next we have Argonaut. Argonaut is probably the first Mon that I brought up that I consider a very key, very good Pokemon in the current meta. Argonaut's original concept was the concept decentralizer. Essentially, it aimed to take focus off of the top five Pokemon in the meta of its time, which was again Diamond Pearl Platinum. So I don't actually remember what the top five Pokemon in the meta at the time were. Not that I should, because uh, I was like a child back then. But essentially, Argonauts aged very well because of the fact that it is just a very good unaware wall. It really shuts down a lot of Pokemon due to its typing, its stats, and its ability. Also, it sets up spikes very well, has item removal via knockoff, and can phase out Pokemon via circle throw. Um, yeah, Argonaut's the first uh Pokemon that I've discussed so far that is really a staple part of probably six or seven cat Pokemon, which are the best, undisputed, in the meta at this moment. And that just comes down to how good it is on balanced teams. Simply being able to deal with offensive threats as they come. Moving on. Next we have Kitsuno, a Ghost Steel type. Kitsuno's concept was ultimate scout, essentially being able to scout out uh, several aspects of an opponent's team, including moves, items, abilities, and etc. etc. Kitsuno is pretty bad at the moment. This set, I would not recommend using Kitsuno at all. But if you were to use it, this could be one set that you'd use. A primarily utility-based offensive mon with defog and U-turn. Hazard removal is few and far between in this meta, so that's always appreciated. With the U-turn to pivot out, strength sap to get a bit of HP, lower some attack, and shadow strike, another custom element. Which is a ghost move with a 50% chance to lower the target defense by one. Um, Overall, Kisno isn't actually really a bad mon, and I'd love to use it if each of its stats were just 10 points higher. I really just think it's a victim of power creep. I don't think that it's much deeper than that. Hmm. Next, we have Cyclone. Cyclone's concept was a neglected ability. So it was supposed to select an ability to utilize very well that typically isn't utilized that well. The primary ability of focus was Shield Dust, but Static is probably the better move on it right now. Cyclone likes to run three attacks slack off, but it's also a very good defensive defogger, and it's good at pivoting via Volt Switch. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to Cyclone. It's not very prominent in the current meta, but it definitely has its niche. It's a very good defensive mon, as you can see. 108, 118 bulk goes very far, and it's not exactly a slouch on offense either, because of its great coverage and its ability to pivot via Volt Switch, really maintaining momentum. And yeah, it's just a pretty good mon. It's one of my personal favorites, even though it's not necessarily that good right now. Moving on, um, Colossoil, a ground dark type whose main concept was to quote unquote stop the secondary, otherwise known as just um, preventing secondary effects from moves. So it was able to do that through I think the last custom element that we will bring up today, Rebound, which is essentially magic bounce, but only on switching. Magic Bounce didn't actually exist in Gen 4, so they actually called it when they created Rebound. I believe, right? I'm not gonna look it up for now. But then also Guts to stop to really punish us statusing. And right now, Colossal is not good like at all. Um, but it does have Rapid Spin. It does have Stealth Rock. It does have Knockoff for item removal, Facade, Sucker Punch, Headlong Rush, and a lot of other very strong moves. The issue is more just that the meta really isn't in the place for it right now. Its speed tier isn't good. Its defensive stats are good, but investing in them takes away from your ability to actually make progress and do damage. So overall, it just finds itself in a bit of a shit spot. It's not actually that bad at all. But moving on, we have Krilliwatt, an electric water type. Its concept when it was being created was utility counter, and that meant that it was intended to be able to be specifically spec'd to counter certain Pokemon that you chose. So, for example, if Krilliwatt was Krilliwatt was created in Gen 4. In Gen 4, let's say Togekiss was running around and you really wanted to deal with Togekiss, you spec this guy to cook Togekiss, but it wasn't able to do much outside of that. Um, However, Krilliwatt has sort of grown from that role a lot. It's not really something that people do anymore. Now, Krilliwatt is a very capable offensive pivot with Serve, Volt Switch, Ice Beam, T-Bolt, and a couple of other pretty decent moves such as Earth Power. It's a pretty good pivot in its own right. The biggest issue with Krilliwatt is the fact that if it gets its Life Orb knocked off, it is pretty much dead. It does no damage output because of its pretty pitiful 83 special attack. Right now, its speed tier just isn't that good either due to the insane amount of speed control and high speed mons in the meta, which is unfortunate for it. But yeah, so overall, Krilliwatt is on the better end of cat Pokemon as of right now, but has a notorious weakness to knockoff. And yeah. Next we have Voodoo. Um, Voodoo is one of Cap's greatest tragedies, in my opinion. Um, its primary concept was a dynamic duo, which meant that it was supposed to be a very good partner to a specific Pokemon, and the Pokemon selected um, for a really good partnership was Togekiss. Um, Unfortunately, this was created at the end of Gen 4, and Togekiss was never OU after Gen 4, um, which, is very profoundly sad. So, what happened to Voodoo? It fell into shitterhood for a very long time. It got buffed in Gen 8, and it's still a shitter. Here's a choice spec set, uh, which is not very good. It does get pretty good coverage as far as that goes. It has stabs, and flash cannon. Um, Psychic, and a couple of other special moves, which is enough for it to hit everything well. But it's not enough for it to hit everything hard. Um, it also gets Nasty Plot, and so that is a set that exists. But overall, Voodoo just lacks enough oomph to be very good in the meta, and it also doesn't help that the tier's most dominant mon is a fairy type with Pixelate Extreme Speed, which I'll get to in a second. Um, so yeah, overall, very tragic mon. Good special attack stat. It's really should be a very capable wall breaker, and it's unfortunate that it's not. Moving on, we have Tomahawk. The concept for Tomahawk was momentum, specifically a mon that helped to preserve and generate momentum in a battle. The way that Tomahawk did that was through two different sets, but it has diverged a good bit from its concept. Its two sets are Intimidate and Prankster. I personally don't believe the Intimidate set is real, so I'm going to touch on that Prankster one real quick. This is also known as Haze Hawk. Um, Prankster Haze shuts down setup sweepers really, really fast. Hurricane and Heat Wave hit pretty strongly off his 115 special attack, and Morning Sun just for that recovery. Um, Over Roost because it gets you a little bit of extra in Sun. Um, Tomahawk is pretty notorious in the cat meta for being very on and off. In metas where it checks a lot of things, it is like the top S tier mon. Um, but in metas where it doesn't, it's pretty poor. Right now is a period of time of, I guess, the latter, whereas I'd say like DLC 1, Gen 8 OU is a period of the former, where it was really just checking everything and its mom, Calm, Rillaboom, just a lot of very important threats of the time. Intimidate is not a terrible set either. It This mon also does get Rapid Spin and Stealth Rock, which are, with their limited distribution, pretty hard to find. But it's just not worth slotting on a team because of like all of the things that cook it. Like Prankster gives you +1 priority, the Fairy type Pixelate Extreme Speed, which I promise I will get to. Cooks it. Stuff like Valiant really cooks it hard. Newer special attackers that hit it super effectively just do really well against it. So right now it's really hard to find a way to justify, using this guy. But it's a good mod. It really is. Like it was created very well. Next we have Necturna. The concept of Necturna was a mon that was able to use Sketch once. Um, yeah, and that was his concept. This was more useful back when Sketch was an actual move. Um, but since it got nuked in Gen 8, they had to find a way to sort of preserve it. The best set on Necturna was Shell Smash Wide Herb before Sketch got nuked. So they added Shell Smash to its normal learn set, and yeah, it doesn't have sketch anymore. So now it's just a shell smash sweeper. It doesn't really have any of the utility that it used to have. Um, in Nat decks, something that's very funny, a tidbit that I guess I'll include real quick. In Nat decks, since it still gets sketch in Nat decks, it can run um, Shell Smash plus another move that is sketches. Today I lost a tour game because I thought that Shell Smash was like the move it sketched, but it used Electro Shot and Rain and cooked me very hard. Um, Not a big fan of that one. That one made me pretty sad. But yeah, very I mean, it was especially a more interesting one before Sketch got nuked. Like it could run Power Herb Geomancy, which was interesting, but it's still pretty good. Next, we have Mollux. The main goal of Mollux was Extreme Makeover Typing Edition. Essentially, creating a Pokemon that uh, not even despite, but because of its typing, is able to really flip the script on it. So Fire Poison, as you can tell, is not a particularly good typing, but the goal of Mollux and its creation was to make it a benefit. So it's able to do that through Dry Skin and the multitude of just very good moves and stats that it has. Um, as you can see, Mollux is pretty min-maxed, especially speaking, and I think Mollix is a very, very good mon at the moment. Um, Between Stealth Rock, it has Calm Mind as a very good set of its. It has Lava Plume and Sludge Bomb to get that burn and poison respectively. It has reliable recovery with the recover. Toxic T Spikes Trick, Wisp. It has Spin as well. I just think it's got a lot of very good things going for it, I think. And it's seen a lot more Tor use as of late, and I think it's very good. Um, some people have done very stupid things with Gastro Acid. Don't try it. But moving on. Oromoth, the concept of Oromoth was risk and reward. So essentially a Pokemon where if you took a good risk at the right time, it rewarded you greatly. Um, And basically, the best way that it did that was through being a setup sweeper. So right now, it runs Tail Glow and three attacks with weakness policy and a weak armor to become a really, really huge ass threat if it does happen to get hit by a physical attack and live. Um, a couple of fun facts about Oromoth. Before it got nerfed, it had Illusion and Quiver Dance, um, which really, really, really was broken as shit. It also has a 600 base stat total because, in technicality, it is a pseudo legendary. It's capped pseudo legendary. It also does have Dragon Dance. If y'all want to run a Dragon Dance set, and it has No Guard and Thunder and other similar low accuracy moves like Blizzard and Focus Blast. Um, yeah, Oromoth's a very intriguing Pokemon, and it's one of my favorites as well. Um, Me personally, I think they should give the Sky Quiver Dance back. I know I'd get crucified if I said that though, but it's really sad that they don't. Next, we have Malaconda. Malaconda's concept was type equalizer, and what that means is it was meant to um it was meant to increase the prevalence of its own type while also mitigating common types in the meta at the time. By the way, I believe moving from Tomahawk onwards, we are now into Gen 5. So this is Gen 5 at this point. So Malaconda, I'm not exactly sure how it actualized its ability or its concept at the start. But currently, Malaconda is a Sunsetter, and it's a pretty good one at that. It has a lot of really good utility, knockoff, rapid spin, glare, parting shot. It has Grav Apple. I would never use Grav Apple personally, but it's still there. Um, it has other good stuff. Sucker Punch, has synthesis for the reliable recovery. Um, and it's just like overall a pretty good Sunsetter. I like it the most as a Sunsettering cat. Uh, I think that it's very good, like just very good. That's it. Um, Yeah, and that's his role in the current meta. Next, we have Commodore. If Volcarona is the matchup moth, this guy is the matchup bird, I guess. Commodore is defined by a belly drum acrobatic set. In Gen 5, belly drum was not really nearly as common of a move as it might be today. Nowadays, we do see it at least a little bit with like Azumarill and Subsalic Como and other things, I guess. But in Gen 5, it wasn't. So its concept was to utilize an uncommon move. And it did just that. With Volt Absorb, it was able to switch in on electric types and whatnot and really get a setup opportunity out of that. And it runs Belly Drum Acrobatics, Bullet Punch, and Drain Punch. Um, and it is a very competent sweeper. And with that attack stat and that speed stat, this Mon was annoying as shit for a long ass time. Thankfully, nowadays it's fallen out of favor because even this speed stat is like not particularly incredible in this meta. Um, so it's not able to really outspeed and outgo everything like it once did. It also false flat versus unaware mons such as Argonaut, like I mentioned previously, and it's just very prone to getting revenge killed or just killed before it can sweep. Um, but yeah, Commodore, it's a very fishy mon. It's used on hyper offense still, uh, but it really can just end a game at some point when it belly drums in an opportune position. And the main form of counterplay is to just stop it from doing so. Next, we have Volkraken. Volkraken's concept was titled Major Third, in which it was supposed to form a very strong synergy with two lesser used OU Mons. The Mons in question in this case, and this is the move to XY Gen 6, by the way. So this is the first Gen 6 cap. So the two Mons in question here are Lucario and Latias. Um, this concept failed pretty much, but out of it we got a pretty good rain sweeper with analytic punishing switch-ins and really good dual water fire stabs, a good special attack stat, and pivoting as well as some semblance of coverage in extrasensory. This mon is a fucking beast in rain, and it cooks hard as hell. I don't really know what else to say. Hydro Pump, I believe Oko's toxic, not Oko's, 2-hit KO's toxic effects in rain on the Switch, so nothing is safe once this guy gets an opening into the game, which, although its concept failed, I think is a very good niche to occupy, even though it's not particularly a large one. Similar Pokemon in terms of concept and how its concept was fulfilled is the next one, Plasmanta. An electric poison type whose concept was to punish its death. The way that it was decided that it would punish its death, or I mean, its removal from the battle, was it would create opportunities for its partner, in this case Gyarados. So essentially, in dying, Plasmanta was supposed to give Dragon Dance Gyarados a free opening, and Dragon Dance Gyarados was one of the most, fearsome offensive threats of the meta at this time. Hasn't aged particularly well, but it's still a more than capable mon with Storm Drain, the electric immunity. It has Magnet Rise to deal with this ground weakness, and it has some good coverage with Surf, Gleam, and some good utility with regards to like Encore and Taunt and whatnot. Um, I think Magnet Rise 3 attacks is its best set at the moment. And I think that it's just in a pretty awkward spot. I think most of the caps I've discussed, which I say are like in bad spots or not good in the meta, um, are really just a couple of really minute changes away from being very, very good, which is unfortunate, but at the same time is something which has to be, I guess, dealt with. And a lot of these monsters just didn't age well, and that's not really anything of their own fault. But yeah, moving on, we have Leviathan. Its concept was to boost multiple in multiple different ways, and it does that presently through Dragon Dance, Calm Mind, and if you're really crazy, Iron Defense. Um, the Dragon Dance set is this one right here. with Dragon Dance, Wavecat, Crash Facade, and Slack Off. The set is very, very woke and very, very broke. Terra Normal Facade blows shit up after a Dragon Dance, and I just very much love this thing. I wish I could get to work on like more than like two teams. Um, but Calm Mind is also a very good set as well with Heat Proof right here. And this mon isn't really like a defining aspect of the meta, but it's definitely good. It starts to see a bit more Tor usage as well. And definitely shouldn't be slept on. Very good mon. Next we have Crucible. Crucible's main shtick is that it has a mega. Since megas don't exist anymore, um, it doesn't have that shtick anymore. Also, Crucible was broken at a time, or its mega in particular. So it got nerfed pretty hard, and so Crucible sort of fell off with it, and it really takes the brunt of the nerf now. Now that megas are gone, and it didn't even have the opportunity to use its nerfed mega. Um, Assault Vest is a set that you can use. Typically, it's just a pivot with Regenerator. Crucible's concept was typing underdog, which essentially involved taking its typing and being able to use it effectively, even if it was deemed as something which would not be like very good. Um, yeah. So I would recommend probably a like more like you know fast pivot set because its speed tier doesn't cut it nowadays. But neither does attack set or just its general role in the meta. Christabel is not good, but if you wanted to use it, I'd say probably Trick, U-turn, knockoff, gunk shot, are probably the best for just as a offensive pivot that can really regen pretty well. Moving on, we have Kerfluffle. Kerfluffle was a very good mon up until Generation 9. Its concept was to use Parting Shot, and it did that very well through both specs, through primarily specs and sometimes Scarf sets as well. Unfortunately, this guy got fucked by the fact that now there's this guy called Iron Valiant, um, that's in existence. So he's not good anymore. In fact, this set is literally called Valiant at Home. Its only like niche above Valiant is the fact that it has Parting Shot, but that really isn't jack shit in the long term because um Valiant just has everything over it. But it is a very interesting mod. Like natural cure, healing it when it switches out with Parting Shot, to its very good stabs, of fairy and fighting, and also it's pretty decent coverage between like psychic, energy ball. Well, energy ball is a meme. Um, poison move, and Terra Blast as well. Um, it's very intriguing, and it's really unfortunate that Iron Valiant completely cooked it. Um, the old days of Gen 8 where I was using Kerfluffle and Miasma, who we'll get to in a second. Those were the days, man. But moving on. Next we have Pajantum. Pajantum. I don't know how to pronounce any of these mons names. I've never heard them said out loud. But, its niche was essentially being a trapper. That's what its concept was. And it still does that with its choice band set. Spirit Shackle is this very spammable ghost tap that lets it just like trap stuff and cook it. Unfortunately, right now, it doesn't have a speed tier good enough to really do much, and its attack set is good, but locking into choice stuff doesn't really help it too much. Um, but it has some very good like moves though. It has like Brave Bird Crunch. Um, it has EQ Haze, Leech Life, Key Fangs, Sedge. I'm just listing off all the physical moves with a high base power on it, but like I'd say it has a pretty legitimate niche still, with Spirit Shackle, Taunt, EQ, and like Ghost Move, or Spirit Shackle, Ice Punch, EQ, Ghost Move. I think that it's like legitimately probably pretty good. Um, but not its choice band set. I'd say probably the better set right now is a leftover set with EVs to speed creep like Phenomicon maybe, and that would help you with like Hemogoblin, Venomicon, etc. I'll get to these words in a bit, Hemogoblin and Phenomicon, specifically. Next, we have Jumbao, which was meant to be a weather abuser, but abusing more than one weather. Um, it's a drought setter, it's a sun setter, it's a sun wall breaker with solar beam, moonblast, terror blast, and synthesis. But it can also run choice scarf trace, which is my like one of my favorite cap sets. Being able to copy like swift swim, sand rush, and really just hit with a very hard stab like grass move is really nice. Um, a fun fact about this guy is that drought was actually like dropped from him basically. So in Sun and Moon, when this guy was created. Sun and Moon started right here with Pajantum, by the way. But um, when Sun and Moon, fuck, what was I saying? Sun and Moon, Jumbao with Drought was basically too broken, so they moved Drought to being a hidden ability, and they made its hidden ability locked in Gen 7, so now it only uses Trace and Overcode, but it's still pretty good from what I've heard. But anyways, moving on. It's just a good Sunsetter. I'd say that I prefer Malaconda because of its utility and the fact that Jump Out, even though it abuses Zone Sun, that also means there's less Sun turns for other mons, if that makes sense. Um, but yeah, Jump Out is also a good mon. The issue is more that like it's a Sunsetter, and there are other Sunsetters there, so it's like competing with other Sunsetters. And unfortunately, Scarf isn't that good right now, but it is one of my favorite sets. Next, we have a set of starters. All three of these guys have the concept of actualizing their ability astoundingly or very well. So this will manifest pretty apparently as I show all three. So first we have Carabolt, the grass starter. Its big thing is galvanized double edge. It's used as a wall breaker slash sweeper with the double edge galvanized doing insane damage, especially if you give the magnet to it, which is another good item on this set. Does really, really ridiculous damage. Also, Rapid Spin has good hazard removal while also being electric type, so common ghost types like Dragapult and Goldango don't actually like wall your Rapid Spin, which is pretty good. Um, the issue is more that it's very weak unboosted. It doesn't really have a great speed tier unboosted. So realistically, you need 2 turns for this to guy to even be like a tenable like threat. Um, and it just doesn't have the bulk or the offensive capacity to really like threaten to do that very well. But I definitely do see a niche for this guy. I don't think that it's bad at all. I don't think Carabolt is a bad Pokemon at all. Um, but yeah, moving on, we have Smokomoto, whose main ability is supposed to be Technician. It makes use of this through Bone Rush, and several other attacks based on the sets. This set right here is Flame Charge Bulk Up Flare Blitz, which allows you to get the speed boost and then nuke stuff with the +1 Flare Blitz and the 4-hit Bone Rush due to loaded dice. I also enjoy using Bone Rush Scale Shot, which sort of compresses the speed raise and the pretty good damage into one slot, while also being pretty good into certain mons like Dragonite. Um, Overall, this mon is not the greatest, but it does have its uses. It breaks stuff pretty well. It gets the speed boost pretty like consistently. And the Technician Flame Charge is honestly pretty strong in its own right. Um, a tidbit about this guy, he was supposed to get Bone Meringue, really. The big thing for him was supposed to be Technician Bone Meringue. But then they made him too good for Technician Bone Meringue. Similarly, this guy was supposed to get Galvanized Extreme Speed, I believe. Or, yeah. But they made him too good for that as well. So, didn't work out for him either. Then moving on to Snailstrom. This guy has Poison Heal, and obviously the best set for that is Toxic Orb. There are some sets where it's like a Rocks pivot, but I'd say the best set at this moment is Razor Shell, Toxic, Swords Dance, and Recover. Um, It's just a really big threat with Toxic being able to pressure fast stuff and the Swords Dance Razor Shell recover with the Poison Heal and its defenses and typing. Just being a really good threat in especially in the mid game, I'd say. Um and yeah, that's this guy. Also gets like Rapid Spin, Acid Armor, Spiky Shield, Stealth Rock, U-Turn. So it's good on utility end of things as well. Next, we have Equilibra, which is another incredible mon. I'd say this is probably like another one of the big like 6 or 7 that I talked about earlier. Um, its concept was focused around delayed attack moves, which manifests in Doom Desire right here. It has great utility in Rapid Spin, Stealth Rock. Um, doesn't have Stealth Rock. I lied. I don't know why I keep saying it has Stealth Rock. I've said this several times now. But it does have Rapid Spin. It has Pain Split. It has great special attack stats, so it's able to really pressure stuff um, offensively, and is able to really get its business done with setting the Doom Desire and no, I did that. Setting the Doom Desire and um, facilitating other mons to break through. This Pokemon used to be even more broken than it is right now. Uh, it used to have Dragon Tail and other phasing moves. Now it doesn't. Thank God. Um, but yeah, it's still a very good mon. The big thing for this guy is to keep his leftovers. I don't know why I keep calling these guys. Is to keep his leftovers because when it's knocked off, it has no real passive recovery. Because it's levitating, so it can't really get grassy terrain either. Um, but yeah, this is just a very good mon as a defensive pivot, being able to set up the Doom Desire and just really like letting your teammates go to town. Um, yeah. Next, we have Astrolotl, the first Catmon of Gen 8. This Mon's main thing was to be an offensive support, which is best accomplished through its moveset of Spikes, Will-O-Wisp, Stomach Tantrum, and Fire Lash. Other good moves on this guy: Defog, Healing Wish, and what was the last one? Thunder Wave. Those are all very good moves on him. Regenerator really helps Astro with being able to come in multiple times, threaten stuff out with the Fire Lash, even without offensive investment, getting that defense drop each time and just being able to threaten stuff out, setting the Wisp or the T-Wave to really cripple stuff, and then setting up spikes, um, just to really help out your teammates in a more offensive way than perhaps other mons would do. Um, so yeah, overall it actualizes concept very well. Currently not too good in the metagame, but it definitely still has its own niche, which is the most important part. It's less about viability and more about being able to maintain a tenable niche. Which Miasma I'd say couldn't do. Um Miasma's concept was roadblock, which meant that it was supposed to really punish pivots in a very meaningful way. And it sort of failed in that. In Gen 8 it was pretty good at it. In Gen 9 now it just cannot do it at all. Um as it's a bug dragon type with a decent special defense, a poor defense, a somewhat decent speed tier, and a colossal attack stat. Right now, Miasma's main role is one of a swords and scale shot sweeper on hyper offensive teams. This shreds balanced teams. Like Miasma on hyper offense, this is like an insanely powerful set against balance. Um, between that scale shot always hitting like for what like 100 power at +2, getting the speed boost and whatnot, um to like neutralizing gas, really cooking abilities and whatnot. This mon is insane. Neutralizing gas was primarily to like nerf, quote unquote nerf regenerator, um because in the meta that Miasma was sort of being discussed in, um there were like a lot of regenerator mons walking around. So neutralizing gas stops regenerator mons from getting recovery, in case you guys didn't know on the switch out. But it's blessed with a lot of other good moves, like Fire Fang, First Impression, Mega Horn. It got a special attack nerf. It used to have a tough ass special attack set with the Compound Ice Thunder. Um, I'm trolling obviously, but my dear friend the Poopy Doopy would definitely agree with me on that front. Um, But yeah, it's settled into a good role, but it definitely doesn't have a particular niche, and it's not as good as on hyper offense as it was early generation either. Um, but yeah, that's just how it functions now. Chromira is a dark normal type whose ability was essentially defective ability. So its concept was defective ability, essentially being able to take a ability which is deemed detrimental and make it even benefit the Pokemon in question. So the ability which was chosen is color change. Um, and unfortunately, this didn't work out for it. Um, it's a dark normal type. It has a very powerful stab boom burst, but often it loses that stab due to color change. Choice Specs 4 attacks is a decent enough um, set, but it's not very good. And Calm Mind is another set that it runs, but again, not very good. That's just because its stats are too balanced as well. Um, Overall, this mon really just needs something to help it out. Right now, I wouldn't say it's like terrible either. It's just doesn't have a great speed tier, doesn't have a really good defensive typing on the like switching. Um, hmm, doesn't have a particularly good like attacking stat, so it's just in a very weird limbo. And then Pokemon which are super effective against one another, like Dragon and Ghost, well not Ghost, but Dragon types, really just abuse this mon hard as hell. So it's just unfortunate. Um, Couple of fun facts about this guy. I believe this guy's supposed to be supposed to be a mythical, and it also has one move of each type because it's an artist. Um, Canonically, which is cool. Next, we have Venomicon, which actually has two forms in a Giratina style form change. So this one has to hold this item in order to be in this form. So Venomicon's concept was optimized ability, so being able to optimize the ability that it was given via moveset and stats. So it does it in its base form through stamina and body press, and just being a very good physical wall with sludge press. It also runs Nasty Plot Hurricane as well, which is also a pretty shisty set, which is gaining a lot of popularity right now. Um, yeah, this is a very good mon. There's not much else to say. This is also in my like big 6 or 7 that are very good. Um, as in this base form specifically, and it's not really showing any signs of stopping. Next, we have Epilogue, which used to be very good because it had an insane speed tier and tinted lens. Now it sort of fell off. It runs typically like a coiled brave or gunshot roost, but it can also run like U-turn rocks because of tinted lens. U-turn actually does hit pretty hard. Um, but yeah, it can also run like a U-turn rock set. Having Vile, like the item needed for the form change, means that it's weak to rocks, which is very unfortunate for it as a pivot though. So right now it just finds itself in a pretty awkward spot post nerf. Next we have Saharaja, which in concept was supposed to utilize a legendary move. So a move which is specifically a legendary signature move, which is typically banned from cat Pokemon in order to really aid it. And this is the set. It uses Diamond Storm as its move to fulfill the concept, and it's a water absorb mon. Um, Typically running something like Earthquake, Diamond Storm, Hornleaf, Swords Dance, but it also has stuff like Rapid Spin. Um, yeah, it also has stuff like Rapid Spin and Rocks. And Body Press. So Diamond Press is also a pretty decent set. Um, Typically you're gonna run Water Absorb because Serene Grace is bummy as fuck and only affects Diamond Storm. They didn't give it anything else that actually like works with it. Um, Saharaj is just in an unfortunate spot now because they introduced hella grounds into the meta that just like do anything that it wants to do but better. So like, for example, fucking like on the uber defensive end, you have like Clodsire, and then you have like Gliscor and Lando T. Then you have Treads and Tusk. It's just in a very awkward spot, and Ting Lu as well on the more defensive end. So it's just in an awkward spot with what it wants to do. Can't do really much because like on the offensive end, it's outclassed by Great Tusk, and like Gliscor, Swords Dance Gliscor, and even Lando really. And on the defensive end, is outclassed by like Ting Lu, Clodsire, etc. So it's just like in an awkward spot, but ultimately, this mon actualizes his ability pretty well. And yeah, next, we have the big bad that I've talked about several times here, Hemogoblin, with the Pixelate E-Speed that I've talked about so repeatedly. Um, its concept is bang average, meaning that it is a bang average mon that manages to be competitively viable, and it does that by the fact that this shit has fucking Pixelate E-Speed with bulk up. Um, but as you can see, none of its stats are above 100, which is pretty rare for Catmons. Um, and this is like a set that it would run. I'd say that probably Moonlight is better on it than Taunt is nowadays. This mon was just nerfed, as in the change just went through today. It lost Bitterblade and Firelash, and now it's forced to rely on either Flarelet or I believe Temper Flare. So um, it's gonna receive Temper Flare. Um, So yeah, now it's before it was able to compress both its fire stab and its recovery into one move with Bitterblade, which was a bit insane with bulk up Pixelate E speed plus Bitterblade being able to do 50% recovery. But now that's lost that, it sort of needs to rely on Moonlight if it wants longevity, and if it doesn't, then it gets worn down a lot easier. So I'd say now it's in a pretty good spot, but this guy really terrorizes a lot of shit though. And that's like the reason that a lot of mons that I've listed previously like aren't that good straight up are is because of this guy. Um but then moving on, we have Crusadon. Again, this one's one that I have no idea how to pronounce. Crescadon might that makes a lot more sense because like Cascade, Crescadon. All right, moving on. This mon's concept was fast wall. And as you can see, it's a fast ass wall, and it's pretty like main vanilla set is Scald Moonblast Recover Thunderwave. Um, really you can't get much better. It has other utility moves like Healing Wish, um, and like Haze and Encore and stuff, I guess. But and like Taunt, but Scald Moonblast Recover Thunderwave just incredibly good. Has multi scale to mitigate those hits from full HP. Has Rough Skin, which is like Giga Greed, for like physical attackers, and just overall a very good mod. The fast recover into multi-scale also helps it a lot, and the fast thunder wave as well. It just really slots very well into bulkier offensive teams because it's not really like a slouch on offense either, and it really just opens up a lot of doors for its teammates. Um, and yeah, that's the last completed cap as of now. So I'll go into real quick what Cap 34 is looking like so far. So Cap 34 is supposed to be a Clangorous Soul setup sweeper with Dazzling. Its concept is supposed to be utilizing an underused item in the meta, and the item which was decided on is Throat Spray. Throat Spray, Throat Spray plus Clangorous Soul gives it +1 in everything and +2 in special attack. And it's also likely going to have Clanging Scales, Sludge Bomb, and Surf. So this is going to be a priority immune setup sweeper, which is meant to really be a very big threat. And I'm really excited for this, and I will probably update this video as a whole when Cap 35 finishes. But just know this mon's about to be heat as hell as well. But I don't have enough, knowledge to really talk about it to the same degree as I did the other months. But yeah, that's it. That's my summary. It was long as shit. Hopefully y'all appreciated it as an intro to the cap meta and what each of these guys do. See ya.